No, Roberto. I didn't ask you to join.
Hello.
Hello.
How is it going?
Good.
Right on, man. So, how was your week?
So far, it's been busy, but it's warming up here in Virginia where it's not freezing anymore.
Yeah, it's warming up here in Knoxville too. We're not too far away, latitudinally. I don't think.
And I've got altitude on you. We're at
Any
24,
anything
20.
interesting on the church scene in Bluefield?
This week is kind of slow. We just people are coming back. We've had a lot of floods and all that stuff, so we haven't had don't have a lot on the calendar than just the regular stuff. Bible study and worship this week. So
Uh,
nothing really exciting today.
okay, well, hopefully we'll add a little excitement here. For all of those who are watching, Billy is pounding beer as he does this.
It's root beer.
If you're going to put on the camera, you got to show the camera, man.
It's
There it is.
root beer.
There you go. All right.
You can buy that at Cracker Barrel. Where else?
Are you
Of
or are
course,
you?
you can buy
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
you can buy root beer. You can buy beer at Cracker Barrel now. So
Yeah, that's right. They've been doing that for a while now. Are you a? Do you partake in a beer from time to time, like an actual beer?
no, I actually just hate beer. I don't like it at all.
You don't like the taste of it?
No, it's just I don't know,
Any
bitter.
any can I get you to admit any alcohol use as a pastor on the Pastor and Atheist show as we start?
Yes. But I got a better story about that. I have a friend who was talking to me the other day, and he said, I was really looking at getting a still, and he's a pastor. He says, I was really looking at,
But
I wanted
still,
to have my own still. And he says, but in Tennessee, it's illegal to have a still.
okay.
Yes.
So this is somebody lives close to you in Virginia.
No, he lives in Sea.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Yeah, he's in the mountains of Tennessee, about the same altitude as we are.
so
But
what would a pastor do with a still? Like, is there
I assume he was going to make moonshine.
yeah? Can you take Holy Communion with moonshine?
No, that would be way off the mark on that one. I have done it with grape knee high.
Okay. Well, not to be too blasphemous, we're about to watch a video from a one of the first atheist content creators on YouTube. His name is Dark Matter 2525. I have, of course, I'm telling this for the audience and not just you. I've sent you videos, and we had a good chuckle
Yeah,
at them. But yeah, YouTube, I believe, started around 2005, and he started his stuff around 2008. And he started making cartoons, and you know, if you're watching this and you want to check out his other stuff, it's pretty funny stuff. If you are of the religious type, I will go ahead and put that warning out there for you, because it is more on the edgy side. Now, this is more what we're going to watch today is more of a vlog, you know, and I. Full disclosure, I've seen most of it except for like the very, very end, and Billy has seen what you've seen about half of it.
about half of it. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
that's
So,
about right.
uh, I feel like before we get started on this, though, on the actual subject, and you know, we're about 3 weeks late, so what we can be a little bit later anyway. I feel like maybe you and I should just have kind of a quick discussion of what you know what we kind of want out of maybe this project, and you know maybe some goals. Like I want to be upfront and say this is not a we're not here to debate each other, you know, on the validity of religion. You know, that
Right.
doesn't mean that those perspectives won't be, I mean, like if they come natural, you know, whatever, we can discuss whatever. It's not, but it's not the intention to like come at this combatively.
Right.
You know,
And
I
we're not
think,
here to save people or not save people.
yeah, I'm not trying to convert anybody to atheism, and I don't think that you're trying to convert anybody to Christianity. And I think it's more just interesting to have a discussion. Maybe a little background is in order. For the folks that maybe who are going to stumble across this video for the first time. Billy was my youth pastor at Trinity Methodist Church in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I was probably a little bit of thorn in his side.
Only that one time.
Only the one time. Oh man, I have, man, guilt is forever. If we want to talk about what's eternal, you know,
That's right.
guilt.
That's
Yeah,
right.
well, I mean, I could tell that we maybe we can tell that story another time. But yeah, you
Yeah.
know, in general, Billy was my favorite pastor, and I guess maybe the weird thing about this is that you know, I just decided to move forward with, I guess, my disbelief of things, and but
Yeah,
that
but
doesn't
let me
that
say this. Let me say this about that. I was watching you, on Facebook a while back, and you'd posted something about being an atheist. But honest to God, if more Christians took as much time and thought and consideration into what their faith is all about, the way you did, I think well, honestly, I think the world would be a better place because people would have been more introspective and thought about what it means to be whatever they are.
Yeah, I don't want to get into this thing where I'm like, hey, you should be like me, because I am
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
I'm kind of a, I don't know, man.
But the value is in
picked a
the
life.
process.
For me, I just think, and I think that you and I, when we've talked about this, we both, I think we want to, if there is a goal with our viewers, it's mainly just to bring people closer to an empathetic point of view, right? Like, and listen, I struggle myself at times. I don't think anybody can completely remove themselves from their own epistemic predicament, right? We're living in our head, but to try and just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and listen, if it for me as a person who's really concerned with maybe how I see the world, moving, and maybe the country, and maybe even the things that have kind of always been this way in the South in a way. I just want to try to get people to a more empathetic state. And for me, I don't need necessarily a religious path for that. But I am not opposed to anybody who does take a religious path toward that. But I do think there is a discussion there, right? Because we've
Yeah,
talked, yeah, we've talked about cherry picking the Bible, right? Which
yeah.
I I think the
We'll
only
we'll
yeah.
have plenty of opportunity for that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, I think the only sane thing to do is to cherry pick the Bible, but and
I, I think anybody who claims that they don't doesn't know the Bible.
that would be
If you're a
my
Christian and if you're a Christian and you say you don't pick and choose certain things, that you don't negotiate the text in some way, you're just lying to yourself. Because we all, well, I say this every time I say this. There's always some idiot that says no, slavery wasn't so bad. Uh, the Bible is full of endorsements of slavery, but we would
yeah.
never say that today.
It's not like if you've went down the road to see what it says about slavery, it doesn't say you should own slaves explicitly. But it does give directions on what you should do with the ones that you have, since we haven't talked about that. So, like, endorsement, it's just like, it's common knowledge that you'll have some slaves, so, or there'll be some slaves. So this is how you should treat your slaves. So, if
Yeah,
you're given rules on how to treat your slaves, you probably endorse it, right? So,
right. And a lot of that was used to endorse slavery in the U.S. and other
oh
parts of
man,
the world
yeah,
too.
there's a long conversation to be had over the dynamics of the argument back then was when we're talking about American slavery, were human beings that they had enslaved, black people, were they animals, or were they just lesser humans that still needed to be saved? And it was just such a
Yeah,
horrific, and it's just another footnote of
and
horror about this. But yeah,
I remember learning in school, like elementary school, maybe even as far back though, certainly middle school, we talked about slavery, and we also talked about indentured servitude, which are
mhm.
both slave. Um, but one is slavery that is we would call, well, indentured servitude is I have sold myself into slavery so that I can pay off my debts, to that kind of thing. And there
Yeah,
was usually a time frame and somebody came out of it.
sure,
In the Bible, that's not how it works. But then there's chattel slavery, which is what American slavery was really
yes,
about, which
you can own
people
the
were not
children.
able.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, uh, so yeah, like I would also even go as far to say is that indentured servitude was always a bad deal too. The way they did it
Yeah, it is.
in biblical times, it still wasn't good. you know,
That's exactly right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
and so the point of that is to say that, if you say you don't pick and choose through the Bible, then you're probably not being honest with yourself. You're probably saying,
there's gaps in your knowledge of the Bible,
yeah.
right?
So back to your original start on this, which was what are we doing here? And I think one of the things that I hope that we get across is we're not enemies.
Eh,
You don't have to be. you don't have to be a Christian to respect Christians, and you don't have to be an atheist to respect atheists. Um,
Sure.
and we have a lot of things we agree on. And I was in a Bible study the other day, last week, and somebody said to me, "All atheists hate Christians." I said, "That's really a harsh thing to say," and I would just completely think that's wrong. Most atheists don't agree with Christians on certain things. That doesn't mean you hate anybody. Uh,
Yeah. Listen, it's going to be different for every person. I don't want to speak for every atheist. uh,
yeah, well, he was blanketly saying all. There is no. If you are an atheist, if you're an agnostic, you're
sure.
another religion. You hate Christians.
I think
I'm
it
like
doesn't
that.
matter if you're atheist or Jewish or Buddhist, and you're just a mean old snake. You're just going to be a mean old snake. You know, that's kind of what
Right.
it comes down to it with me. You know, there's hateful people everywhere, right? There's hateful
Yes,
atheists. So like, let's
that's
not.
right.
Yeah,
And there are empathetic and compassionate atheists and Christians as well.
sure. I would like to think that this is, you know, again, where we're coming together is, you know, in embracing empathy if we can, you know, and
Yeah.
whatnot. So that probably leads us. We could talk about a million things, and we're really good at spinning off in different directions. But we do have a video to watch.
We could call this thing divergent.
Yeah, you know, we we watched a little bit of Marion Buddy's sermon 3 weeks ago and had some commentary on it. Again, we're back to Dark Matter 2525 here, old school YouTube atheist content creator. He has a vlog here, and he kind of breaks down the reaction to it. And we're gonna watch a little bit, and we're gonna have some reaction and just some talking, you know, here and there about, you know, what we see and what we agree with and whatnot. Billy's going to demand that I pause the action in the same way that my wife does. She hits me with the pause it, because, you know, when and I'm the pause guy, so I'm used to
We
being
do that too.
I'm used to being the pause guy. So, all right, let's see if I can get this thing started without messing it up.
If you
I
need to
am
test your
fuming,
sound, that's
and
a
I
good one.
already
What's that, Billy?
I said if you needed to test your sound, that beginning is good.
Yeah, it's pretty loud. Yeah,
It's good. Get good deep bass is what I meant.
yeah. I'm gonna adjust this here and see if it's.
people that are actively living in sin should theologically not be repulsive. No Christian would have gotten up and left. I'm so mad at that Bishop Marion Buddy found out she is a lesbian. Why in the hell was she even allowed to give rules of conduct to be a bishop? Person's disgraceful abuse of the activism has no place in service to the bishop is a disgrace. Which version of the Bible does she hold? We need to respond to this abomination. We are not putting up with this crap anymore. Being kind.
I just want to quickly comment. I'm off Twitter now, but if you'll notice that all of these folks have blue checks.
That's a
So
good point.
so what they're doing here is, you know, this is part of the propaganda, right? You can pay to be up front, right? And
Yeah.
you know, I mean, Ryan Fournier, he's like one of the worst. But anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah, I didn't
got
even
us
notice
into
that
this
because I've never
mess.
been on.
Who chose her? She looks gay. First Timothy chapter 2 verse 12. Read more your Bible.
The so-called bishop who spoke at the national prayer service on Tuesday morning was a radical left hardline Trump hater. She brought her church into the world of politics in a very ungracious way. She was nasty in tone and not compelling or smart.
He has to throw nasty in because she's a woman.
I mean, that's just like his MO, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, was there a can we just talk for a minute about how gross it was when he was like, "I will protect the women."
Oh God, yes.
Oh, how,
Yeah.
oh man, there's just so many ways. I just want to say how, but like, let's just keep watching. Let's keep watching.
This sounds really serious, doesn't it? What on earth happened? Seems as though some bishop denounced Jesus Christ at the presidential inauguration and encouraged everyone to worship Satan instead. Let us listen to this supposedly anti-Christian message that was preached by Bishop Marion Edgar Buddy.
Mr. President, millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now.
Have you watched this video much?
I've seen, this part. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I enjoy watching the different faces here as they realize what's going on.
I was watching JD Vance and his wife,
Mm-hmm.
and it was almost like she was kind of interested,
Well,
and he's just being a child.
so their expression at this point was, "Oh, she's directly said like Mr. President, like she's talking to him, right?
She showed him respect too. She did it in a respectful way.
Yeah, but she's already said the stuff at this point, I believe, about. Well, maybe she has. I don't remember.
No, she hadn't gotten into the
There
immigrant stuff
are
yet.
Well,
gay, lesbian, and transgender
but the sermon had been
children
going
in
for a while.
Democratic,
Yes, that's correct.
Republican, and independent families
Like,
Some
look at the eye
who
roll
fear for their lives.
on Vance.
And the
He's such a
people.
prick.
The people who pick our crops
Well, then there's
and
Eric.
clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms.
Well, he looks like he's confused. Eric is like words.
He's dazed.
He's words. All right, okay. We're not putting.
We're digressing.
We're not putting ourself in their shoes.
That's right. Our best
That-
foot forward.
They're
That
caught,
is what empathy is.
yeah. They're caught off guard. Tiffany
Yeah.
Trump seems to be having a time though. She has a look on her face.
And meatpacking plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals. They may not be citizens or have the proper documentation, but the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful
stop that
members
thing.
of our
That they pay taxes thing is something people really don't seem to understand.
Yeah, they don't.
Immigrants actually not only pay taxes, they pay Social Security taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they don't qualify for Social Security benefits. So they're actually helping our Social Security.
Yeah, they're putting into the system without getting the benefits.
That's right. They're
back.
just
Yeah.
adding free money to our retirement.
Yeah. So I mean, I have commentary on that anyway. Like, I don't think that should be the case. Not as long as
It shouldn't be.
But whatever. There's got to be something, probably, right? I'm not going to claim that I would know what the best policy on immigration would be. I don't think the best policy is to take people and put them in jail, that come over the border because they want to have, a good life, right? A better life.
And the guy that he's put in charge of doing that, they keep arguing, it's just the criminal element of the
Oh yeah.
illegals.
But that's
that
not who they're
talking
going. I mean, like we've seen already. That's not who they're getting.
Yeah, well, he says if they came into America illegally, they are a criminal, period. That's the mindset of the man in charge of that.
Yeah.
That Trump chose. And
You talking about Homan?
yeah, exactly. I never could
Yeah,
remember.
and this is just classic racism and xenophobia. They're probably that way because they look different. They don't speak the same language. Have different, customs, culture. It's
That's
just,
right.
It's the classic. It's the same every time on this type of stuff. Anyway, all right, moving forward.
our churches and mosques, synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be merciful to the stranger, for we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people in this nation and the world. I'm a person of faith, surrounded by people of faith. And with God's
He looks
help,
like
I
he's gonna fall
believe
over.
that unity in this country is possible.
He don't want to be there.
Not perfectly, for we are imperfect people and an imperfect union, but sufficient enough to keep us all believing in and working to realize the ideals of the United States of America, ideals expressed in the Declaration of Independence with its assertion of innate human equality and dignity. And we are right to pray for God's help as we seek unity, for we need God's help, but only if we ourselves are willing to tend to the foundations upon which unity depends.
Do you have any commentary on Buddy's style? Like, you know, you don't have to be mean or anything. I'm just like pastor to pastor. Like, do you guys like critique each other's like game?
So you know, it's interesting. When I was in seminary, of course, there were a lot of women and a lot of men.
Mm-hmm. What was your seminary, by the way?
And
So we can have that on the record.
Candler School of Theology of Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
And yes, we even had some gay folks who were there. They came from different denominations. I had a friend in seminary who was a converted Jew, became an Episcopalian, and was moving from Episcopalian to United Methodist. Actually, I think I got that in the right order. So you know, we had a lot of diversity. We had folks who were affectionately known as the angry white man from Alabama, because they were angry they were white. Because they were, well, you know, sometimes I mean, we're affectionate because we did a lot of things together and had a lot of classes and all that. But when it comes to the style of preaching, I think the thing I learned early on was I can't preach like the guy who taught me preaching class. I can't preach like the other guy I had who taught a preaching class. I have to preach the way I preach, and that has to be genuine to what I am. One thing that she does that I could never do and get away with is she's using a manuscript, and you can tell the way that she's using a manuscript. When I do that, as you know,
well, she has a little she has a little iPad, it looks like.
Well, we've moved from paper to
a tab. You've done that too. That's right.
I use my laptop. I fold my laptop down now.
Okay.
But I have notes. I have an outline. I have some notes. You know, here's this story, is that story.
So you're like a freestyler in the pastoral world.
Yeah, so to speak.
I would imagine she probably is a little bit more strict with her, you know, she's in a moment. She's planned every word for this. She might be more freewheeling as if you were to.
Well, I would say that in the Episcopal style, there is a more, I don't want to say rigid. I don't want it to seem that way because that's not what I'm after. There is a more planned out kind of thought. Carla, my wife, works for an Episcopal church, or she does for another few days anyway. And the priest there, she and I have worked together before when we were in the same community, and she she had a very different style from preaching than I do.
Mhm.
And part of that is because she's a woman, and part of it's because I'm a man. Part of it is because of how she was taught and how I taught. A part of it is on personal comfort, you know. Um, I, if I was given a manuscript, one of you know about me, because you and I both do this, we divert, we get distracted and go a different direction a lot.
Yeah.
So if I'm preaching from a manuscript and something comes into my mind that I want to, highlight that a little bit more or whatever, what happens is I can't get back to the manuscript, so I get stuck.
Mm.
So I had to leave that. But honestly, my favorite preacher is a guy down in North Carolina in in Charlotte, and to me, he's thinking through things as he's talking, and there's this just
Feels like a level
it's
of
really,
personal epiphany as he's going.
yeah, there is,
Sure.
and it's intriguing to me,
Cool.
because he's taken you along on his journey of that. Whereas, you've seen other preachers. Everybody's seen them. There's Joel Olstein
Mm.
and some of those that are on TV, and I know you've heard some preachers in your life as a child. Um, that we all have a different style. So I don't know if I critique anybody's style, especially if it is genuine to who they are.
Sure.
And I've seen her in a number of things, and that really seems genuine to her.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to just talk about her style, it's just, like
Quiet.
she was there for the moment. She was calm. She was controlled, and she brought a message of peace and love.
Yes, absolutely.
But
And if
she's
I
not
said the same
flamboyant.
words,
She's not flamboyant at
no,
all.
or in the words of the idiot on the screen, she's not exciting.
Well, let's you know what, let's move on to that.
Mr. President, what did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the sermon? What did you think of the
What did you think of the service?
What did you think? Did you like it? Did you find it exciting? Not too exciting, was it? I didn't think it was a good service, no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press.
They can do much better.
He's looking
Press.
for excitement.
Inside, inside. Thank you,
Well,
thank you.
he found it.
Are you really the last person to find out about this skip ads?
We
for
got
other buttons?
ads.
This is Pi, and if it sounds familiar to you, it's
Oh,
probably
hey,
because you've
listen,
seen their
you
ads
know-
everywhere.
That's the challenge of it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't
By the
know.
way, I know-
We're just gonna have. I mean, when I get in the editing room, I can pop that stuff out and flip around. All right, so
I know a guy that looks just
like this guy.
exactly like him. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think he's in Florida. His name's John. Nobody knows his last name.
Oh, they're different people, I promise you, but it's just uncanny how much they look alike.
Bald head, beard.
Same eyebrows, same facial structure.
Well, maybe maybe he was twin at
the
birth.
the only difference is he's wearing blue and not just all black.
Oh, your buddy wears all black. All right, let's
Yeah.
let's hear what John has to say here. He's chomping at the bit. You can tell. Look at his face.
I want you to pay very close attention to what's going on here. What she did angered a lot of people who call themselves Christians, especially those who support Donald Trump, and even angered Trump himself. His initial reaction that it wasn't very good and wasn't very exciting, and later demanded an apology, calling her tone nasty and her statements inappropriate. Really? Does that seem accurate to you? What might he have liked better? Well, Reverend Lorenzo Sewell delivered a very impassioned benediction prayer at Trump's inauguration. And Trump and company seemed to like that much better. This is the gist of that.
I'm glad he included
Let us
this.
pray for our 47th president. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful that you gave our 45th and now our 47th president a millimeter miracle.
What is that?
It's I don't know. I mean, I've never heard that phrase before, but it's certainly in the African preaching style, African American preaching style. There's a, this kind of rhythmic kind of thing. But
sure,
also
it's an alliteration kind of thing. But I mean,
yeah.
I mean, is it just saying a tiny miracle? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good. I don't know idea what that means.
We are grateful that you are the one that have called him for such a time as this, that America would begin to dream again. We pray that we would fulfill the true meaning of our creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we are so grateful today that you will use our 47th president so we would sing with new meaning, my country, 'tis of thee. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Every city, every village, and every hamlet. Free at last, free at last. Thank you, God Almighty. We are free at last. If you believe where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Come on, put your hands together and give your great God great glory.
He got, as the kids say, the Riz.
The Riz.
The Riz. He
Okay.
got Riz.
As the old man. What?
Charisma. The kids call.
Oh yeah.
I think they more say it like somebody's good looking and charming, but like in a romantic way.
I'm sitting there thinking, dude, you ain't Martin Luther King.
Well, obviously he's invoking those words.
He did to begin, and he did at the end more directly.
I'm confused at who's free here. The billionaires?
Yeah.
Like who's been what?
Well, it began with we can dream again.
Would this be pandering?
Yes. I mean, especially when we get to the next thing that he does, it proves that.
I mean, he's got all the energy though. I mean, this guy.
Oh, he's very effective at doing what he does.
Yeah, I'm not like style wise. I mean, like as a entertainer, I'm like this guy. I understand why like people get jazzed up about that, but like also you're mixing a lot of stuff here, right? And you're giving the free at last speech for the president that in Harlem took out a full page newspaper ad to like get innocent black guys the death penalty. And
I thought it was interesting that his graphical references were all like basically one end of Pennsylvania to the other.
Well, New Hampshire too, I guess, but he started.
Yeah, but it's all up there. It's talking about the same mountains. Nope. I've never heard anybody talk about the towering mountains of New York.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but he's, he's evoking Dr. King again, trying to say, because he's just putting different mountains in there to fit with what Dr. King said in his "I Have a Dream" speech.
Right.
But
But it's just pandering, right? Like.
Oh, extremely, because it's the whole thing about the 45th and the 47th president. For such a time as this, he's evoking, and that's Esther. He's trying his best to say that Trump is chosen by God. There's no sense of grace. There's no sense of humility. There's no sense of,
As an atheist, that shouldn't bother me.
No, but as an American, God shed His grace on thee. There's that in our own American hymns. uh, there's this idea that leaders, this idea that Trump has, that leaders need to be mean, they need to be cruel, they need to be in his what he sees as strong, and there's no sense of having a strong heart. There's no sense of having a strong sense of, so that all people can dream, not just his friends.
Hmm.
And keep in mind, he's in a room with what, 700 people that can squeeze in there, instead of the huge crowds he had at his first inauguration.
Well,
Because maybe he was just trying to, it wasn't because it was so cold. He's got enough money he can afford a coat,
well, sure.
I just,
I don't know. Moving back to like, just the reaction here though. I mean, you can see it feels like they're like, oh yeah, well, if they can do this, we can do this,
yeah. And by the way, the other part of it is watch Biden and Harris compared to Trump.
Well,
And
I mean, they've just taken a
posture.
beating here, and they're I mean,
Yeah, but I think they're being respectful.
yeah. I mean, it's a somber moment for them, yeah, but they're there,
Yeah, they're there, and they know it's a moment of prayer time, so I'm going to bow my head. He's like watching him the whole time.
Yeah, no, well,
Is he pandering enough?
yeah. Is he doing it the way I wanted exactly? And it looks like it was.
Yeah.
You get the idea. Very dramatic, lots of vocal range, strong inflections, using powerful words and imagery from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., converted into a prayer to God. Very showy, very performance driven, very much unlike the calm and subdued plea for mercy and compassion given by Bishop Marion Edgar Budde. Very different styles, right? One is quite meek and mild, while the other is extremely flashy and showy. I found that very interesting, not just because of the contrast and how that relates to Jesus's actual teachings on the matter, but because of what occurred afterward as well. A valuable lesson about compensating can be learned here. This was the bishop's reaction to the controversy.
We did get that nasty gram from the president in the middle of the night, in which he did insult you and demand an apology. Yeah. And I know I've seen remarks that you made today that you've received a lot of not just invective but threats, including death threats, over the course of today since that happened. And I would just ask if you wanted to respond either to the president or to the people who have wished you ill in response to this.
Well, I've had people wish me dead. I'm not sure if they've threatened to kill me, but they seem to be pleased if I met my eternal destiny sooner rather than later. And I would simply say, I was trying actually to encourage a different kind of conversation, that you can certainly disagree with me, you can disagree what I've said or did, but could we as Americans and fellow children of God speak to one another with respect? I would offer the same to you. I would listen to your views and I would honor them, but we don't have to go to the highest extremes of contempt when we are in a position of disagreement. And I think if we could get that back as a country, we would go a long way in being able to work together to address the many problems that we face.
And this was Reverend Lorenzo's reaction to the controversy.
She was so arrogant. The way she
I remember watching this the first time, and I was like, how do you get arrogant? You're the one who's like doing the Martin Luther King impression, my man.
Yeah, it's a pot kettle, it's astounding what is the word? The lack of personal awareness.
Yeah.
To the way you're doing things. The performativeness of his thing was, And I want to say first, when I say it felt performative when he did his prayer, and it was to a certain degree, but I do want to acknowledge that that's also just a part of the church culture that he comes from. That I don't mean to
I don't know about that, man. I mean the church
Yeah.
culture of, for the
style,
yeah,
Yeah.
but like insulting
Yeah.
some like that, when they're just saying like, hey, you should be nice to people. The arrogance to tell
Yeah.
people you should be nice to people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I trying to remember if he addresses the other issue that I think
Let's
too
see.
many people.
She didn't even acknowledge the President of the United States of America. She had an opportunity to minister the gospel. Instead of that, she is a heretic. She should never be allowed to preach the message of Jesus in her life because she's not even talking about Jesus.
Again, we see the different styles come through. On the one hand, we have a quiet plea for open and free conversation and for unity. And on the other, we have cries of outrage and a demand for censorship. Now, immediately after his showy prayer at the presidential inauguration, and I mean immediately, Reverend Lorenzo Sewell got off the stage, went into a back room, still wearing the same clothes, and did this.
I need you to do me a favor right now. I need you to go buy the official Lorenzo Sewell
This
coin.
is
I want
astonishing.
you to be
Oh yeah, right. The coin, the Trump coin. There's some stuff to talk about the Trump coin too. Golly.
able
Yeah.
to see politics become manifest, not just in a way where we're praying over political gatherings, but where we're seeing us become the hands and the feet of the Lord Jesus Christ. Would you help me? Would you help us in this endeavor? Would you go and purchase the coin in order for us to do what we need to do in the ministry? We do transportation, housing, education. We heal medical, mental, and dental illnesses. I need you to do me a favor and go and get that coin in order for us to accomplish the vision that God has called us to do in our earth. I give God glory.
There's a part of me that don't hate this.
Tell me why. I'm curious.
There's a part of me that knows that there are people out there that are giving because they do believe in what he's saying right here.
The part about helping people.
Yes. Like I know that there's people that were lifted up by his whatever, for whatever reason. They didn't see the pandering. They're excited about like, this. And then he, I would love to know
I hear you.
what
I
his
hear you.
take was on it. But like, if money did go to these causes in the way, like that, look, man, again, I'm an atheist, but I don't hate organizations that do good in the community. And sometimes I understand that there's some like, some undercurrents of like fraud underneath, but like sometimes I just have to look the other way because at least I know somebody got a blanket or something, But
Yeah.
Still, this is so greasy, isn't it?
It is because and just he's like grinning about it, and sure you've seen some of the statistics or data or whatever you want to call it about what happens when people buy these things.
Oh
it spikes and then it plummets.
Well, they call them what? They call them rug pulls.
Yeah, that's the word I heard. Yeah.
It's like a thing that happens.
For what he has done,
Intentional.
but we know that King's dream can only be fulfilled if we acknowledge that people are living in a nightmare. So here's your
He launched his own crypto meme coin bearing his name, Lorenzo Coin, which immediately spiked up to $4.5 million in value and then crashed 93%, all within less than 24 hours. Classic rug pull. At the time I'm recording this, Lorenzo Coin is worth 0.00008 cents. If you're not aware, it's basically a Ponzi scheme. I provided a link in the description below to a video by Upper Echelon that explains how it works. You may have also seen CoffeeZilla expose scams like these, like the Hawk meme coin,
Are
He
you
addressed
familiar with
this
CopyZilla?
Lorenzo coin as well. It's becoming
No.
more common among those who go viral to capitalize on their virality, to launch these scam coins that funnel money from people who think they're investing in something when really they're just giving their money away. Some of the more self-aware ones might think that they'll get in on the rug pull, but if you're not an insider, then that's a pretty risky bet, because you won't know exactly when it's going to happen, and when it does happen, it's almost instant. What's disconcerting is that Trump himself has done this. Contrary to popular belief, during Trump's first term, he actually made more money than any other politician in U.S. history, about $2.4 billion. He has already outdone that during his first week of his second term, timed perfectly
Astonishing.
with his meme coin. Now, I want you to consider who is actually more in line with Jesus's teachings. Jesus did preach compassion and mercy, even to those who were called sinners, which technically includes literally everyone. Jesus also expressed anger and even physical violence toward those who used God's name and house for personal profit. Remember what I said about a lesson to be learned here, a lesson about compensating. Like a secretly gay preacher who deliberately, exuberantly condemns homosexuality for the purpose
Swagger.
of being seen doing so as a way to compensate or derail suspicion. Reverend Lorenzo put on a grandiose performance to be seen and gained adoration for himself, which he then turned around and used for personal profit. Bishop Buddy, on the other hand, was a soft-spoken advocate who pleaded with who is probably the most powerful man in the world right now, and people were utterly vile to her in response, and even wished death upon her. Mike Collins, a representative of our government, publicly called for her deportation, even though she is an American-born citizen, and deporting her for this would violate both her freedom of speech and religion.
Let's hope it doesn't get there, right? Were they just like, whatever, we're going to deport people?
You don't yeah, you don't belong here anymore.
Yeah, right.
It's our choice. Yeah, he talked about the Jesus turning the tables thing, and he said that they got angry at people for profiting in the temple. To be more precise, he was angry because they were profiting off of others. They were exploiting people, and that's the issue. And that's what this guy is doing. He's getting money from people who.
I mean, he pawns
who
his
think
kingdom.
they're helping.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Knowing that they're going to lose money because they thought they were in an investment. They're going to lose money.
Right. I mean, would it have been better if he had just like, instead of a crypto coin, wouldn't it? He could have just like pointed it the direction to the charity, but no, he went with a Lorenzo coin.
Here's my QR code. Give generously.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Where do you see Jesus in this picture? A man who also preached for compassion, was chastised by Pharisees for the company he kept, and was met with outrage and even death for his words. When I see these angry Christians, I see people who would have been among those who demanded the death of Jesus. I see Pharisees. Now that sounds absurd, doesn't it? Christians who hate Jesus? But look at what's going on. The events speak for themselves. Jesus' teachings were clear, and even Jesus himself said that there would be false prophets and followers, and that he would say, "I never knew you." And that's because such people existed in Jesus' time as well. In Matthew chapter 23, verses 4 through 5, quote, "They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is done for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love,
I love the dramatic
the
music.
place of
Oh yeah, man. He's nailing it. You ruined it though.
honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogues. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces. Jesus had their number thousands of years before they were even born. And that's because
I'd like to remind everybody that this is an atheist.
who knows pretty well. I mean, he knows scripture better than a number of people do.
because people like them are nothing new. They're the hypocrites. Jesus condemned them the most. They've always existed and will always exist. The question is, do you want to be listed among them? While the cognitive dissonance may be clear as day to me and perhaps to you as well, I have to wonder if there is even an attempt to intellectually justify the outrage against Bishop Buddy. We're all well aware of the emotional outrage. I've seen plenty of that, but that's all it is, emotional. Out of all the many tweets and comments, I don't see anyone appealing to scripture to justify the wrath, except only to cite verses that demand the silence of women. Of course, that doesn't speak to whether or not the woman had a valid point. It's just telling her to shut up. I've also seen plenty of posts that refer to her as a lesbian, perhaps trying to appeal to a conflict of interest and a reason to reinterpret the Bible to benefit herself.
Well, it's okay to hate lesbians.
Yeah, we're about to get to that cherry picking part, right? Where, you know.
Well, yeah, and honestly, the Bible doesn't say anything about lesbians. Most of the references that people use to, clobber gay people is targeted toward men performing sex on men.
Sure,
and
but
it's usually men in a violent.
I mean, we're talking about Leviticus here. Mainly, that's the one that people are like, Leviticus is the one, right? The one that's like, it's an abomination is the words.
Yeah, there's about different texts, and there's one in Romans and some others, and in some translations that are newer translations, they use the word homosexual. Of course, the word homosexual is not there, and of course, when you use the word homosexual, it's everybody who's gay, right? Whether you're gay or lesbian, doesn't matter. You're homosexual. If you are drawn to the other sex, if that's your sexual orientation, then you fall into that. But that's not what the Bible really says. It doesn't say homosexual. That's not a word.
It says man with man specifically, I'm pretty sure, right?
Specific, yeah.
But it also says, like, in that same area, like, shrimp is a problem, and so is, like, polyester.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, maybe not specifically polyester. Not specifically homosexual, not specifically polyester, but, I mean, so you're picking and choosing, right? Like, look, man, you've worn mixed fabrics, you've eaten some shrimp. We know, we saw you, Captain. We saw you, Captain.
My fabrics only support the Pirates. They don't support other teams.
Yeah, well, that's blasphemous enough. Actually, I don't have. I don't have any hate for the Pirates anymore.
Who could have hate for the Pirates? They're harmless.
Yeah, we're getting off track, man. We're trying to talk about serious stuff. But the Reds and the Pirates equally struggle in the exact same way.
Sadly, yes.
I mean, all right, moving on.
But she is married to a man and has had children and grandchildren with him. There is no evidence that she is a lesbian. These particular Christians are deliberately spreading lies about her. In other words, they're choosing to commit sins over this. Why? Well, perhaps because they see their own sin as being somehow lesser than the sin they think they're fighting against. Or maybe they don't actually care about sin at all, and sin is just an excuse to justify their hatred. Above all, they seem to think she insulted and disrespected the president, that she used the pulpit for political reasons and should thus have her tax-exempt status removed. This, mind you, after years of preachers explicitly telling their congregations to vote for Donald Trump. But I don't see how she disrespected the president by asking for his mercy. On the contrary, that acknowledges and respects his power. And I don't see how asking for compassion for various groups is political, especially when some of those same groups are addressed in the Bible, and it was, after all, a religious service. Those groups aren't inherently political. They're made political by the people who want to enact political policy against them. Nobody is born a political pawn. They are turned into political pawns by the very people who complain about making things political. Because all the posts I was seeing were largely based on emotional outbursts, I sought intellectual arguments against her that at least attempt to find some sort of biblical grounding to justify the opinion that what she said was wrong. I wanted to steelman the argument against her. But what she said seemed very much in line with Jesus, and the response to her seemed very much in line with all those people who criticized Jesus. It seemed very cut and dry to me. But I found that The Blaze, which is Glenn Beck's media company, published an article on the situation, and they offered arguments that cited the Bible. So I figured this might be a good way to tap into what, if anything, there was to be legitimately offended about. So let's see what they have to say. The article first asks the question, quote, should God be used as a mere prop to justify the liberal agenda? It says that she used her sermon to scold President Trump. The degree to which they're poisoning the well here is absolutely comical, or it would be if it weren't so sad. She said absolutely nothing to scold Trump. You heard her. She asked for mercy and compassion. Not once did she...
Yeah, scolding is kind of specific language, isn't it?
It sure is, and
not Mr. President, scolding, please take in consideration. That's not scolding.
Yeah.
But it may feel like scolding to somebody who has a view and they know that they may know about their views and what they're doing.
So do you think it's like the difference between a parent saying, I'm not mad at you, I'm disappointed.
Yeah. And that felt worse, so.
Yeah.
Appeal to Trump's character in any way, good or bad, during that sermon. So saying that she scolded him is a lie. Not a good way to start, especially while attempting to speak on God's behalf. Now, their question implies that God was being used as a prop to justify the liberal agenda. Remember that one of the main attacks against Jesus was that he was hanging around with undesirables. Now, perhaps you think that as a Christian, you cannot condone what LGBT people do, but neither did Bishop Buddy. She asked for mercy and compassion for them, which is different from condoning. I would argue that all Christians desire mercy and compassion from God, with the understanding that such mercy and compassion does not mean that any of their sins have been condoned by God. That same understanding was not extended to Bishop Buddy. Regardless, Jesus himself had nothing to say about LGBT people. I would think that if it were as vital as some Christians seem to believe, that Jesus would.
Did we see that little? What's your
Yeah,
take? What's your take on that right there? This little.
So I would agree that Jesus really never said anything about homosexuality or, he did talk about sexual immorality, but it was aimed at that.
Right.
But his little extended to Bishop
put it
Buddy.
right back, but
regardless, Jesus
he
himself
said it could also be
had nothing to say about
infidelity and rape.
Infidelity
people.
and rape. Yeah.
I would think that if it were as vital as some Christians seem to believe, that Jesus would have at least mentioned it. There's even less theological ground to stand on regarding illegal immigrants, because the Bible says to welcome the foreigner as your native born. Their next point is that God makes a human either male or female. He does not make...
Oh, man.
mistakes. Well, so what?
Yeah, that's poisoning the well too, right?
Right. And well, the atheist perspective about God not making mistakes, it's a bit different.
Does that apply to transgender people at all? Transgender people do not claim to be anything other than male or female, man or woman. And for the second part of the statement, quote, he does not make mistakes. Well, that implies there can be no biological ambiguity, but that's just not true, because there are intersex people who were born with both male and female characteristics, including both genitalia or even no genitalia at all. I personally would not describe such people as mistakes, because I don't believe any of us were intentionally designed at all. But as a believer in God, I don't see how you could cling to the view that mistakes aren't made, when in fact there are all sorts of genetic abnormalities and conditions, birth defects, and very unfortunate babies who are born with fatal deformities. Reality itself screams against you, and if you commit to the position that the Bible claims there are no mistakes with how people are born, then you're pitting the Bible against the record of medical history, a medical history filled with records, pictures, videos, testimony, samples, and scientific studies. I don't think that's an argument you want to make. This tweet,
what's that?
There's a pastor who in the United Methodist Church, that his name is Adam Hamilton. He is in Kansas City. He wrote a book that was basically a series he did when he was very early starting on, and it was confronting the controversies, and it was about homosexuality. It wasn't the one particular was about homosexuality, and it was interesting because he did an updated edition of the book later, and in the updated edition, one of the things he talked about was that very idea of whether God makes mistakes or not. And interesting, he uses the idea that God doesn't make mistakes to defend LGBTQ folks, because if you say that God doesn't make mistakes, then anybody who is created in the image of God is not a mistake. And that he used the analogy. So we would never suggest that a kid born with Down syndrome or somebody on the somebody on the spectrum on the spectrum would be considered a mistake. They're a child that's loved by their parents and all that. So the same is true for LGBTQ folks. They're people that God loves. That
sure. I mean, and from his perspective, from my perspective, it's well, there's not.
It's irrelevant.
There's no design. You can see mistakes everywhere. In fact, the mistakes are one of the major proofs, if you will, or maybe not. The mistakes are what we would call like counter evidence, right?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But also the mistakes are what make things beautiful
Yeah, well, yeah,
in this world.
well, I don't know if a
Some years
mistake.
ago,
I don't know if all mistakes are
go ahead.
beautiful. I think that's a nice way of that's sugarcoating like real suffering, right?
Oh, I would absolutely agree with that. I absolutely agree that not all mistakes are beautiful.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean
There's
like differences. Like this is what we're trying to say. Like you're saying mistake. This isn't a tomato, right? This is you're saying mistake, and we're saying like, no, man, it's fine. This is
well,
just what it is.
yeah.
You know.
I was referring to mistakes. Like a short example, I did a wedding couple, and I always tell when I'm doing a wedding, I always tell the couple something's going to go wrong during the service. I'm going to hope to God that it's me that made the mistake, but something will go wrong. It'll be little. It won't be that big usually. I forgot something in the service, and I was at a new church with a new situation. I wasn't even minister of the church yet, and the sound guy was up there. I was introducing the couple to go on their merry way, and he's looking at me like, what's going on? What's going on? And I did what he was doing, and the bride leaned over and she said, "We forgot the sand ceremony," which is a little ceremony like a unity candle.
Yeah. You mix them and do the thing or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So she said, "You forgot that," and I met with them later. Some years later, I just ran into them at a place getting a hot dog, and they said, it's been 4 or 5 years since we got married, and we still talk about that, and it's something that made our wedding even more special to us.
Right. I've
And you wouldn't.
in the many weddings I've
beauty.
done. Yeah.
Yeah,
To
that's true.
say, well, you know what? I did one this weekend, and
That's right.
like the bride literally was sick.
Oh,
But she's trying to
fun.
keep it together and whatever, and she I try to tell them like, look, they never go completely correctly, and you just have to let that be part of your wedding story,
Exactly.
and,
And
and
and, and so that's what
yeah.
I was getting at. Sometimes the mistakes, the errors, the flaws are what
Is where
make
the
things
beauty
beautiful.
is. Yeah. The difference is in
Yeah,
yeah, and
a piece of art, even music.
right, not being the same, is a beautiful thing. I think
Exactly.
that's what we're trying to get
Yeah,
at. Not, but some of these mistakes are like enormous suffering, right? And
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
you
And
know,
what's worse is when the things that cause enormous suffering are intentional.
yes, yeah. So yeah, let's move on.
Conclude with the laugh cry emojis sort of speaks volumes, doesn't it? They squirmed uncomfortably in their seats, and their expressions indicated that they were clearly not happy with what was being said. J.D. Vance repeatedly looks to his wife, who is a Hindu, perhaps to see if she is as offended by the Christian service she's attending. I'm often told by Christians that the truth offends. Well, here we have people being offended in church as a bishop pleads for their mercy and compassion. What we get from the blaze is not an understanding that they were offended by the truth. Instead, what we get is a sort of class clown laughing to encourage a much stronger student when being asked for mercy by a much weaker one. This
Bullies.
seems quite far from
Yeah.
Christ-like. It seems pride-filled and arrogant. Again, they appeal to the binary of biological sex illustrated in the Bible, but that is not inconsistent with a male to female transition or a female to male transition. There's only two genders expressed within those equations. I'm sure there are those who believe in more than two genders, but I did not hear Bishop Buddy mention them at all, though I'm sure she'd want them to also receive compassion and mercy. Would the Blaze argue that such people should not receive compassion and mercy? If so, why? What have they done that deserves actual scorn? If you are unwilling to give others mercy, Perhaps you should not be surprised when you receive no mercy. For even Jesus said that you will be judged in the same way that you judge others. Next, they say, quote, the problem with the LGBTQ agenda is that it not only promotes a type of marriage and sexual relations that God does not.
I mean, I hate this whole agenda thing anyway.
Yeah.
What agenda?
They use that a lot.
Yeah, no, they want to. This is the us versus them thing, you know, that they do so well.
Mm-hmm. They do it very well.
They call it an agenda. They have an agenda, and it makes the whole, when somebody says you have an agenda, like people are, it's not usually like a business meeting. When you hear somebody say yeah, they have an agenda, like it's referencing like something nefarious, right?
Yeah, and it's a you've got this all planned out.
Yeah, so like, you know, the idea that there's like some kind of agenda to, I don't know, convert people into what was that?
That was me coughing. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if you're trying to tell me a whisper or something. You know, anyway.
No, I was just coughing.
Yeah, no. I lost my train of thought. Yeah, the agenda thing. It's just ridiculous. The fact that anybody could say that these people are trying to convert people into a life of, you know, bullying, right? Like getting bullied, rather, is what I mean to say. Getting bullied.
Well, and that's been this.
It's so stupid, Billy. I can't even. Like people who think there's an agenda. It's like you're stupid.
Yeah, it's been used for so long to try to say they have the agenda and they're trying to promote and teach. They're trying to encourage people to become this. You know, nobody chooses to become gay. Would you put yourself through all that just because you wanted to? I mean,
I had this discussion with a buddy of mine the other day, and I'm just like, "Are you crazy? Like, are you crazy?" Like he was doing this over the trans, you know, the like trans, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "Yeah, man, it's just it's popular." I'm like, "Popular?" Like it's just folks that just don't have like a clue about what they're talking about when it, you know, and
if it were popular, more than 12% of the population, which is a high number.
People are mistaking acceptance, mere acceptance of, like, you know, these people are in society, and, you know, as Buddy says, should have compassion, you know, and be treated with respect and dignity. And I am in total accord with that. And, you know, that means also, like, you know, following the whole golden rule thing, you know, the do unto others, right? You know, like, if somebody's like a transgender, if they have pronouns that they prefer and it is not, you know, what they were born as, just do it. Like, what? Who cares? Yeah. You know, I be nice. You know, and if we're doing the thing where we're putting ourselves in other people's shoes, we have to try to say, what would happen if I was born with a backwards brain? You know, like everything else just didn't match. You know, and you know, when you're talking about a spectrum of this kind of stuff, I mean, it's not just one thing. Like, you know, it's mixes and matches and different levels of it, and it's just all of the hate usually comes from just a misunderstanding of what everything is.
Yeah, you know, I remember when I was in college.
There's no agenda.
That's right. I remember when I was in college, there was the concept of political correctness was kind of a new thing, and it started being used as a phrase to say political correctness is a bad thing, when all the people that worked on the concept of political correctness from Berkeley or whatever university it was that they started the concept, kind of abandoned it a long, long time ago. But you still hear people, I don't want to be too, you know, just to be politically correct, and they've used it as a negative rallying cry.
Right, and then it moved to a different language, social justice warriors, and then now it's woke. And
Yeah,
all of
exactly.
this is just like being nice to people. Like
Yeah,
treat people
exactly.
with compassion, dignity, and it. Come on, man.
Yeah, it's called human decency and
Yeah, I'm
politeness.
woke. Yeah, I'm an
Um,
SJW. Yeah, I try to be as PC as I possibly can. But listen, I am also a guy who gets drunk at a bar and my mouth runs sometimes. So I mean, we're all make mistakes. But like, I
yeah,
mean, the general rule is like, do your best.
yeah. I have a friend is a bluegrass singer, and he did a song that was called "Golden Rule," and it was number one on the bluegrass gospel charts in America for like 20 weeks. And
Wow.
in the song, at one point, he says uh, he uses the pronoun he, and then he keeps using the pronoun he, and there's three times. And I tried to say, Alex, you need to change the words. It needs to say he, she, they, and because it would really have a little bit more impact. But he never did. He made the top number one song on that chart for all that time. I asked me trying to change his song at that point was a little
Probably too late
moot.
now.
But
Yeah.
and I know him, and I know that he believes what I was saying there. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we're starting to be up against him, Billy, I think. So let's move forward.
yeah,
ordained, but it leads adherents to make their core identity about who they are attracted to or what type of people they want to have sex with, unquote. This is a common talking point, but there's a fundamental misunderstanding going on here. Sexual orientation is part of everyone's core identity. If I were single and looking for someone, it would be exclusively women. So that's what I would project. If I were going on a dating app, I'd imagine that I'd have to specify that I'm interested in women. If I were out with my wife in public and I put my arm around her or held her hand, as I do sometimes, nobody would think anything of it. And that includes if such a relationship were depicted in a show, movie, video game, etc. But if a gay couple simply did the same thing,
Just existing.
it would be considered shoving it in everyone's faces. Two different standards are applied. You make it the entirety of their core identity because that's all you see. You reduce them to that rather than recognizing them as multifaceted human beings with other interests and concerns. More importantly, however, you have to consider the context of history. If, historically, you or your group were widely discriminated against by the rest of society, it's actually the rest of society that is making the source of their discrimination into a major part of your core identity. In other words, you didn't choose to make it your core identity. Society itself, first and foremost, chose to focus upon that aspect of your life. Now, though I'm not technically part of the LGBT community, I am an advocate for them. So naturally, a lot of them follow me on social media. Despite this, I hardly ever see them share that aspect of their identity, unless they are being discriminated against and they are making it known. Conversely, a lot of the explicitly gay material I see online is that which is shared in outrage posts by people who are against LGBT people. The irony is that I only get explicit LGBT material shoved in my face by those who are against LGBT people. I don't seek it out.
That's funny.
So
What's that?
It's funny that's probably true.
Oh man, yeah. Outside of like Pride Month, usually it's not like but Pride Month is Pride Month. It's like any other month that we're celebrating stuff like that, and we're speaking to those injustices and
That's right. Yeah, I have this couple that the heterosexual couple, man and woman, married together.
When you
they
say
were
you
walking
have
down
them,
they were members of my church.
members of the church. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, A different church.
Like
Sorry.
you ate them, Billy? Are we finding out
was
that
saying-
you're a cannibal?
I was saying I have friends.
Yeah.
And I know that's surprising, but so
Unbelievable.
they were walking down Gay Street, and for those of you that don't know about Knoxville, the main street in downtown Knoxville, Tennessee,
Is Gay Street.
called Gay Street. And though, of course, certain people have tried to change it because they can't handle that.
Yes.
But anyway, she's walking down the street.
I play there every
on
Wednesday.
Saturday
I play
night.
on Gay Street every Wednesday.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So they're walking around, like people do on Gay Street. And there's the soapbox preacher, down there by coffee and chocolate. And the guy starts yelling.
Is this the one by Market Square?
Yeah. Gay Street, but right off of Market Square.
Yeah, as you're turning, yeah.
Yeah. So he's yelling at her because she's got really short hair. She's a mom, for God's sake. She has short hair because it's easier to take care of, or that's the style she likes, or whatever the heck it is.
The street preacher's yelling at this lady with short hair.
Yeah, yelling at her because you'll get your life straight. She's holding the hand of her 6'4" husband as they walk down the street, and he's yelling at her because her lesbian lifestyle is so horrible. I'm like, dude, can you just think about it?
I wonder what he thinks about like dudes with long hair.
Yeah, exactly. Probably not good.
Well, then what is he doing preaching?
And be careful. That's right. And be careful with what when you wear, right? Yeah. Anyway, she came back and she told me the story. Was like, oh, jeez.
All right, Mr. Dark Matter.
Don't see it unless they share it. In order for them to do that, they have to seek it out. And they do that with the specific intent of stoking outrage. Lastly, if you're gay or lesbian, you are a minority. So it will be more difficult for you to find a partner unless you somehow make it known that you are part of this minority, seeking someone else who is also part of that minority. That doesn't mean that your core identity is who you have sex with. But to an outsider who is unwilling to think about these things, unwilling to have empathy or charity, it may seem like their sexuality encompasses their entire identity. The reality is that a gay couple probably doesn't think about sex any more or less than a straight couple does. But the very way we straight people distinguish gay people from us necessitates considering sexual orientation by definition. So it's not about them making it their core identity. It's about people like those who wrote this terrible article, reducing them to that one-dimensional way in which they are defined as different from us. Now, as far as God not ordaining those types of marriages or sexual relations, that does not make them exempt from mercy and compassion, which is all that was asked for. I do think it's a more challenging argument to justify gay relationships within a Christian framework because of what Scripture says, but make no mistake that such arguments have been made. For instance, the Reformation Project lays out 10 arguments for a biblical case for LGBTQ inclusion. I'll leave a link to that in the description below. There's also arguments that explain how verses used to support anti-gay stances are actually mistranslated.
Are you familiar with that project?
I've heard of it, but I'm not really familiar with it, no. I was trying to read some of that as it scrolled by, too, just the heading.
I guess you'll just have to click the link.
Look it up. That's right.
Yeah, it's right. This is
Yeah,
it right down here.
And I would argue that one thing he was saying that it just made me start to think is homosexuality isn't just about sex either. It's about who you love.
Right.
And there's more to, there are people in asexual relationships who are heterosexual. They're still heterosexual if they're not having sex together.
I mean, I think we don't have to like parse through everybody's like thing. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We can just say you should be able to love who you love as long as it's not,
Right. And the other thing is, simply
abusive.
put, if you're an American, it doesn't matter what. Everybody deserves the same rights.
Yes. Period.
Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Yes. And religion doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you behave in accordance to somebody else's religion. You know.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter to them.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. We've got about 30 minutes on the money left of the video. How much time do you have?
I got all the time in the world.
All right, let's go.
Like these verses in Leviticus, for example. I'll leave a link to that below as well. I think those arguments would be valuable for LGBTQ Christians to hear, because we don't pick and choose our beliefs, just as we don't pick and choose our sexual orientation. So if you have a belief that seems to contradict with the very way you were born, I'd imagine that would lead to some quite agonizing internal conflict that is not conducive to a just and loving God. All the more reason to ask for compassion and mercy for such people, and all the more reason to question whether these anti-gay sentiments are actually coming from a just and loving God, or from merely typically prejudiced people. As a non-believer myself, I see those verses as products of ancient tribal societies, not the inerrant word of God. So they carry no weight with me and give me no reason to condemn LGBT people at all, as I'm free to come to my own conclusions about moral issues, unbeholden to the moral opinions of people from thousands of years ago claiming to speak for a God. But even as a non-believer, I take note of how those verses always refer to lustful acts and not orientations. And that's because our understanding of sexuality has changed a great deal as we've learned more about it, just as our understanding of the natural world has as well. It's the same reason ancient literature, like the kind we find in the Bible, has no information on black holes or germs, for instance, because they weren't discovered yet. A curious thing, while supposedly having direct contact with an omniscient being. Likewise, since then, we've discovered much more.
I mean, you know, since the Bible is the direct word, you know, you don't want to.
God would have known.
You don't. Well, you just don't want to, like, you know, what they don't know won't hurt them, right? Like, just tell them whatever.
I always liken the creation stories. There are more than one.
Yeah, right. In Genesis, even. Right?
Right. In the first couple of chapters, there's at least two stories that are creation stories, and they are not the same. But if I were saying somebody a scientific manual on how we think the world came to being, first off, that's not the point of the story. It's not meant to be historical. Secondly, they would never did. And they would have never understood it because they didn't have any, you and I.
I'm sorry, there's a little sound artifact there. You said they what?
They would never read it. If you handed this to,
if it was you mentioned your Hamilton Beach manual there.
Really? That was in there?
No, I'm just saying, like, I've never read one of those manuals.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see it. Do you have it in front of you? Yeah. How many of y'all have read the manual to your, what is that, a food processor?
A coffee pot.
Coffee pot.
Coffee pot.
Man, even worse.
Which is really simple.
Yeah.
It's got 4 buttons on it.
Yeah, there was about 12 pages of paper you just didn't even need. I'm not even talking about the ones that have the French on it.
Yeah, French and Danish. Yeah. Plus, it's like the 3rd generation of that coffee pot.
But yeah, they wouldn't. You're right. They wouldn't read a technical manual, or I mean, this is
And
Bronze Age man. You know, they believe in
yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
and it just wasn't the point of the story either.
Right.
You know, the point of the story is God made it and said it was good. You know, that's really the point of the story. It has nothing to do with how it got to be.
I would disagree with that. I mean,
Go ahead.
Okay, yes, your sentiment I would feel is correct, but I would also say that like back then it was probably also still guidance, and like I say, it was still the technical manual.
So
people believe it's still
most
to this
scholars-
day. People believe it's the technical manual.
Yeah,
They may not have read it all the way, and they don't understand there's contradicting evidence, you know. But like,
but we also have the Enlightenment and those kind of periods in our history where we see that scripture very differently than they did.
for these folks, enlightenment, schmenlightenment, you know.
Right. That didn't exist for them.
Yeah.
So the stories were passed down as a way to say, you know, look how wonderful God is, or look at, you know, God, all
that he's done, and
yeah.
Glory be, you know.
Yeah.
More about human psychology. The ancient world did not perceive sexual relations the same way we do now. Nobody was categorized as gay or straight. Who you could have sex with was more dependent upon social standing and cultural norms. In ancient Greece and Rome, it was normal for a married man to have sex with other men. The Bible focused on that as an act of lust and infidelity. And remember that Paul was very much against Roman society, so he naturally spoke out against that aspect of it. But it wasn't the same as a modern gay couple in a committed relationship. You are not morally responsible for anything that is beyond your control, such as the way you were born. It's the same reason it's not immoral to be a certain race or to have a certain eye color, because it's not up to you. If you have a problem with it and you believe in God, then ironically, maybe you should take it up with him. The problem of morality being limited to choice leads some religious people to claim that sexual orientation is indeed a choice. But if that were the case, why would anyone choose to be gay, thus inviting scorn, discrimination, and limiting your options for partners to a small minority? Would you choose that? If attraction were a mere matter of choice, then you could look at someone who you think is repulsive and ugly and simply choose to find them very sexually attractive. Can you do that? If you are a straight Christian watching this, I want you to ask yourself if you could ever choose to be sexually attracted to someone of your same gender. Can you? If you can, then I don't think you're straight at all, and that you've simply tried to repress bisexual or homosexual feelings, and that might be the source of your contempt, seeing others live their lives freely, unburdened by such guilt. What I think is really going on here is closer to the opposite of what this article says. I think it's they who are the ones using God as a mere prop to push an agenda of hatred and discrimination.
That is an agenda, right? To exclude. Excluding is an agenda.
And you know, it's kind of interesting watching, you know, the last few weeks, because now they're using the word agenda to refer to Trump's agenda, and that the Senate and the House need to get on board with Trump's agenda, the agenda. They're using that word a lot now. And it's the idea that, you know, we do have an agenda. It is to end homosexuality or end homosexuals. it is to, it's all the things that.
I don't know if they said that specifically yet. We're going to end homosexuality.
Yeah.
But I mean,
But they want to criminalize it. And the choice for women, and we want everything to be the way we want it that makes us feel comfortable.
I mean, we're on the precipice of this Christo-fascist thing.
Yes, exactly.
And
that's a good terminology.
White nationalism is sort of inbred into that. When you're talking about how it came to be with American history, and what we talked about earlier and whatnot.
Yeah, and so when I was in seminary, this was in the early 90s, 89 to 92. When I was in seminary, I was promoting the idea that we need to get flags out of our churches. We need to stop, that the church needs to stop trying to be an American church.
Flags as in the flag of
the American flag. Yeah.
Yeah.
I went on a mission trip in 2005 to Mexico. We're in the middle of the state of Puebla, in a little town called Totoscac, and they had the American missionary set up a clinic there. Some folks that I know now set up a clinic, and it was the Good Samaritan Clinic. And although it's in Spanish, so I don't want to try to pronounce it. And we were there to help them build their church building. They were church. Most of the folks there were either what here we'd call evangelical, or more Pentecostal, and or Catholic. And so there was this small group.
I worked with a Pentecostal girl at Outback many years ago, and she scared the bejesus. I was at that time in my life, I was probably on the precipice of myself of just falling off the wagon.
Yeah,
and
I get that.
And then I met her, and I think she might have pushed me over the edge. Sorry if there's any of those people knowing it. But man, she said some crazy things, and Pentecostal.
Yeah, so there, that's what was predominant in those two. Catholic and Pentecostal were predominant in that area, and most of the Latino world, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But so here we were trying to build a Methodist church, a United Methodist, actually a Mexican Methodist church. So
is this a Holston church?
So the missionaries that went to build the clinic were from the Holston Conference of the United Methodist Church.
Would it have been a Holston Conference church?
It would not have been, because it was in Mexico, and
it was in Mexico. They don't have the same.
In Mexico.
Okay, yeah.
Right, it wasn't a Latin American church. Yeah.
I got confused somehow on the story.
Yeah. We're in the middle of Mexico, and I walk into the room that they were using as their sanctuary, which fellowship hall. It was just an available room to them, and there was an American flag.
Huh.
Now, what's the point of that? Why would a Mexican church
in Mexico
have an American flag? Because that's what the missionaries brought.
I mean, but
why did the missionaries bring it?
Because I mean, when you think about missionaries historically, that's right. I mean, so the Spanish Inquisition, right? They came with those flags and their religion as well, and dominated.
And so what I kept being told was, don't die on that hill, don't die on that hill, don't die on that hill, don't die on that hill. And there's there's truth. When you're a pastor of a church, you have to decide what hills you're going to die on, because people get upset about all kinds of things in the church. But in the end, what I was saying, I had seminary friends that would say, that's really not that big of a deal. It's not that big of a deal. And I'm looking at it now, I'm going, no, that's what leads to Christian nationalism, which is this idea that somehow Christianity and the American ideals are the same, and they're not.
Yeah. I didn't. By the way, I didn't mean Spanish Inquisition. I meant the Spanish when they went into South America. I was like Spanish Inquisition. That was something else. Anyway,
It was
yeah.
not a really good thing for the church.
No, not at all. But anyway, all right. So I've kind of lost my train a little bit. Should we just move on?
Yeah.
One that allows them plausible deniability for their own feelings.
There it is. The
Because they can
plausible deniability.
simply defer to the Bible verses to justify the hatred that they would harbor with or without the Bible. Their next argument is that indeed God does send commands to be extremely generous to immigrants, citing Leviticus chapter 19, verses 33 through 34. But that such commands were given to Israel and not modern nation states like the United States. They say it's
What?
a wise command,
Right?
It's just,
that it's
just idiotic.
Yeah.
historical context must be respected. They then justify not respecting it by citing Romans chapter 13, verse 1, in which Paul implores Christians to submit to the governing authorities because there is no authority except which God has established. Therefore, they reason, we must submit to the immigration laws of the United States. These arguments are both logically bad and theologically bad. First of all, this is cherry picking of the highest order. All the commandments were given to Israel and not modern nation states like the United States. So which do you pick and choose to follow or not follow, and why? Also, wouldn't such a law give you insight into God's view on the matter, if indeed you believe it is a law from God, and thus wouldn't it be wise to follow anyway? Is Leviticus 19 the only place where you can find information on immigration, or was that cherry-picked because it's in the Old Testament? What about the New Testament, which would probably be considered more applicable to the modern Christian? Well, in chapter 25 of Matthew, it says that when you invite in the stranger, it is as if you are inviting in Christ himself. Just as it is when you feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, and clothe the needy, so too are you doing that for Christ. But if you
Matthew
don't
25.
do those things, it says you're going into the fire. In fact, in both the Old and New Testaments, there are scores of verses about how important it is to welcome, accommodate, and treat well strangers, aliens, foreigners, sojourners, etc. The difficulty in finding all those verses is that there are so many of them. It's like doing a Bible search for the word Lord. Here's 30 of them that I found to be particularly clear on the matter. To contrast that, there are only 5 verses seemingly against lustful acts between same-sex people. Any others that someone would cite require additional interpretation, like assuming, for instance, that the sexual immorality of Sodom and Gomorrah was referring to homosexuality rather than gang rape. So some Christians will use those verses to justify their...
I've said it before to you. I'll say it again. Sodom and Gomorrah is cray. That's the craziest shit I've ever heard.
And for the folks that are watching this guy, he's the one with the cartoon, right?
Yeah. He's got the good cartoons.
The animated from of Sodom and Gomorrah story is actually very, very well done. He knows that story.
I mean, he's done his homework.
He really did on that one.
their strong anti-gay stance, but then they will completely ignore the scores of verses that command them to be hospitable to foreigners. The Bible has even more verses commanding you to care for the poor. So think of how many of those verses would apply to the poor foreigner, like those who cross our southern border. This is a clear case of truly not caring about what the Bible actually says, but just using it to justify personal opinions. Cherry picking, in other words. It has to be, because if they weren't cherry picking to suit their own preferences, then the very same people who are anti-gay and pro-life would also be the ones enthusiastically welcoming illegal immigrants. And they probably would not even be illegal in the first place, because after all, as the majority, Christians would be the ones in the best position to change immigration law to be more welcoming, more forgiving, and more accommodating.
I agree.
Exactly as the Bible tells them they should be. But they haven't done that. On the contrary, for instance, this is House Bill 1484 to go into effect on July 1st, 2025. It was by Representative Justin Keene, a Baptist Christian. Under Section 1, subsection 3A, it states, quote, "The offense of trespass by an illegal alien under this section is a felony for which the authorized term of imprisonment is life imprisonment without eligibility for probation, parole, conditional release, or release except by act of the governor or the natural death of such person," unquote. Life in prison in Mississippi, where they have very high levels of prison labor, including prisoners used to work on one of the largest for-profit plantations in the...
I mean, I said it in 2020 a bunch, but watch 13th.
United States. This is essentially a...
Yeah, it's a documentary about...
oh, okay, I saw it. I saw it back in 2020.
Yeah, you know, it's the new slavery, right? How do you get slavery to be... you know, more.
It's reinstating the Jim Crow stuff too, which was all designed to put black people back in the sleep by
and let's just
arresting them more often.
If we're going to talk about just immoral stuff too, I mean, while we're at this private prisons is maybe one of the most immoral concepts I could think of.
Yeah, my second thought beside state endorsed slavery there was so I wonder which private prison companies are paying him for that to put that bill forward.
Yep, I mean, because that's how it works.
So he's trying to take something that is technically a misdemeanor and turn it not only into a felony, but a felony with a life sentence. And the only purpose for that is to put money in the pocket of these prisons that you're talking about.
Yep.
Way of obtaining lifelong slaves. Welcome to America in the year 2025. The Bible is very unambiguous when it comes to foreigners. It is repeated often enough for it to be totally non-controversial to Christians. What baffles me is why those who want to shut down the borders are so overwhelmingly Christian. Now, as a non-believer, I'm free to hold anti-immigration opinions without being a hypocrite, because I don't necessarily believe in the things the Bible says. But as a Christian who is beholden to the Bible, you simply cannot hold such views without being hypocritical. And Jesus abhorred hypocrisy. He enthusiastically, repeatedly condemned hypocrisy. You are commanded by God over and over and over again to welcome foreigners and treat them as your own. And even to not deprive them of fair wages. The Bible explicitly says that. Yet we see many Christians, and especially Christians in power, doing the exact opposite of what the Bible demands. What about the argument that Christians are to...
I want to push back on the comment he made about hypocrisy.
Mm.
Um,
You mean that Jesus
certainly I agree.
Jesus didn't abhor them?
No. Before that, he was talking about he's free to have any opinion he wants without being hypocritical.
I don't think he made that point.
How would you have heard it?
He's free from heavenly wrath. He's free. He's saying he doesn't have the same. So I'll speak from the atheist perspective. When I decided to let my religion go, that doesn't mean that I don't hold myself to certain like moral standards, and maybe even some that were discussed in the Bible when I used to believe. But what I think he would say there is that I'm not beholden to the rules you are.
Yeah, I guess it came across to me as him saying basically, because I'm a Christian and I have these set of rules or whatever.
Because he's an atheist.
No, referring to me, because I'm a Christian, I can be a hypocrite because if I oppose certain things that are in the scripture or whatever, however, I oppose things that are in conflict with or in cognitive dissonance with the things that I profess, then that would be hypocrisy. And I absolutely agree with that.
I don't think his target would have been you here.
Well, and I think all of us have that. So the second part, though, he said was he said that because I don't have that set of rules, that I don't have that thing, that hypocrisy, that he didn't say exempt from hypocrisy. But it kind of gave that impression that because a Christian has this, that they can be hypocritical, and because I don't have any particular set of rules, I can pick and choose things. But I would think that the struggles you talk about within yourself, which are just humanity struggles, means that sometimes if you say, I believe this,
and then you act another way.
And then you act another way, that's still hypocrisy.
Sure, but I don't think he's referring to his own, like, I think he's just saying that, like, Christians come with a set of rules, and Jesus, that's the whole point of him saying, like, these are all the times it said be good to the stranger and to the foreigner, right? Yeah. He says, like, I'm not even held to those rules. I think he's saying I'm not even held to those rules, but here I am making a video about it to help explain it to you, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree that he's saying that too.
I think I think in that case, he's just saying, like, hey, there's an obvious right way to be here, and I'm not even beholden to and this is the way I feel too, right? I'm not beholden to that, but I follow that, right? Like I don't want.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So if I had to wager, and we were to ever have a chance to talk with this guy, he would clarify in that way, just saying, like, it's not that I don't hold myself to those rules, it's that I'm not beholden to them in the same way you are. You're the one who's comes with the reward or the retribution if you aren't a certain way.
So I would say this, that I think every person who is a thinking person in any way, shape, or form has some set of ethic that they go by, that they live by. Be good to one another, whatever. It can be very general, very human. There's that ethic, and there's always the possibility.
We're gonna be Bill and Ted this. Be cool to each other.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Isn't that what it was?
I guess you get to be Keanu Reeves, right?
I guess. I don't
because
know.
of the hair. You have the hair.
Oh yeah, yeah. All right.
That means you get to be the.
Anyway, so you're pushing back on that, and I'm gonna push back on your pushback a little bit with saying, like, I don't think that he meant that specifically, other than it was just, I'm not beholden to the Christian rules in the same way that you are. That doesn't mean that, like, morally I don't follow these, because I think it's pretty obvious that he does, right?
Yeah.
He wouldn't make this video.
One little comment there. So as a pastor, one of the things I've heard people say over the years is, well, I don't go to church because there's there's all those hypocrites that, and I said, well, do you go to the grocery store? Do you go to Walmart? Do you go to, because let me tell you what, there's hypocrites everywhere you go.
There are,
You're
but
not
like, you
gonna,
know, you're not going to Walmart to express like, you know, ideas and thoughts, and you are
well,
in a
there are
church.
some that do.
Well, okay.
There's this guy that comes to the Bluefield Walmart. There's these bright yellow outfits that have
Got
his,
your Walmart preacher?
yeah, he doesn't preach. He just has a hat and yeah, I've seen his vehicle, and you know it's his vehicle because it's got the same stuff on it. And it's more in your face than just saves even. But it's, you know, very basic stuff that's a little, you know where he's coming from. But every time I've seen him in Walmart, no matter where he is, he's wearing all this stuff, just like somebody wearing a MAGA hat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he's got one of those too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oops, I'm being judgmental.
Oh yeah. You should put your head in the hat of the MAGA.
That's right.
To submit to the governing authority. Well, there's two very big problems with this argument. First, using that verse to justify obeying the law when said law is unjust is a mistranslation of that verse. Before I explain the correct translation, though, you can simply consider the logic of it to doubt that it is meant in the way it is used in this article. For instance, what if the government ordered you to kill babies, or to have gay sex, or to denounce Jesus? Are you to submit to the governing authority then? Obviously, interpreting the verse that way leads to absurdities in which you're putting the government above God. So it stands to reason that Paul did not mean it that way. The words for submit and obey are distinct and used very differently. You are not to obey an unjust law, but you are to submit to the punishment for your disobedience. That's what the verse means. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 through 12, it states that you are blessed when you are persecuted. So be glad for it, because your reward in heaven will be great. He's saying, don't comply, but also don't fight back. Don't rebel. The second reason using that verse is a bad argument is because you agree with the law, despite what the Bible says. See, it's not that the anti-immigration laws pain these Christians to follow. Like they think these laws are so unjust, but they're simply forced to abide by them because Paul tells them to submit to the governing authority. No, it's not like that at all. They love the anti-immigration laws. They enthusiastically support the anti-immigration laws. They want to shut down the border. They want a wall. They want men in towers with rifles. They want patrols. They want barbed wire. They want people to be seized and shipped out, regardless of the reason they're here, be it family, asylum, or just seeking a better life. And they specifically chose the governing authority they did because they want the governing authority to do that very task. And bear in mind that the vast majority of the illegal immigrants crossing that southern border are Christians. So if Christianity is true, then these so-called Christians trying to shut out the immigrants will sit among the goats, according to Matthew chapter 25, and be thrown.
And this is not greatest of all time, not those goats.
That's right. Yeah, I got somebody called me a district superintendent once because I told a story about churches in Texas that were United Methodist churches actually that were taking blankets and toys to the children that were being separated from their families that were being put into, and they were upset.
This in like 2021. No, not 2021. 2017, somewhere like there.
Yeah, this was actually before Trump took office. They weren't being separated, but they were being. They were children.
Yeah, this is when Obama had a little bit of a stain. Yeah.
Well, children came across the border on their own. Parents would send them across for different reasons and whatever, and then children would be, housed in these concentration camp like things, in cages and all that stuff. The same kind of stupid stuff we saw. And these churches and just were taking supply, toys and blankets and some food and stuff like that to the kids. And I'm proud to be a Methodist because we're doing that. And this folks were very upset with me for thinking that was a good thing. I'm like, basic humanity, dude.
Yeah, I think basic humanity is probably not concentration camps, but
basic humanity is I see somebody in need and I offer a blanket.
Yeah. All right.
Into the fire. That's not what I say. That's what Jesus said, according to the Bible. And if this God is real, I highly doubt that you would be able to point to this shitty cherry-picking article and say, but God, you didn't give your law to a modern nation state like the United States. So I was just following orders.
Yeah.
Not the orders you repeatedly gave, but the orders I just so happen to wholeheartedly agree with. How do you think that would go over with the character of God as depicted in the Bible? Notice that this submitting to the governing authorities verse is only pulled out, dusted off, and used when they just so happen to agree with the governing authority. But when they don't agree with the governing authority, that verse gets memory hold very quickly. Christians have no problem resisting politicians they don't like and laws they don't like. They have no problem blocking the entrance to an abortion clinic until they are arrested, like those people Trump recently pardoned. So, I'm sorry, but you can't use that verse to pretend to be forced to adhere to anti-immigration laws. Not only is it dishonest, but theologically, it's a poor argument. Next, the article interprets her usage of the words compassion and mercy to mean affirming and approving of the, quote, LGBTQ agenda.
There's that agenda.
And
again.
a liberal view of
That's
immigration.
right. Yeah. Well, let's be fair. You know what? This isn't wrong, but somehow they're painting this in a negative light. If there is an agenda, compassion and mercy is a progressive agenda.
It's a pretty good agenda.
Pretty good agenda.
Policy. Now, first, it's not a liberal view of immigration policy. It's a biblical view of immigration policy. Also, I don't know what the LGBTQ agenda is, other than they don't want to be discriminated against, which is everybody's agenda, because nobody wants to be discriminated against, especially not because of immutable characteristics like sexual orientation. What the article does here, though, is pretty gross, because it's taking the words she used and twisting them to mean something completely different in order to justify their own outrage. The whole article is this meme. The final criticism the article gives is, quote, certainly Buddy's identification of immigrants as people who merely pick our crops, clean office buildings, and wash dishes is dehumanizing, unquote. This is what you call accidentally revealing your hand. Here it is revealed that the author of this article seems to believe that picking crops, cleaning offices, and washing dishes are not honorable vocations, and that anyone who does them is somehow less than human. What Bishop Buddy said was true. Illegal immigrants do those jobs. Facts don't care about your feelings. What she did not say was that they should be doing those jobs under terrible conditions for low pay. The truth is that illegal immigrants are taken advantage of because their employers have the leverage of the law to hold over them, so they have no choice but to take what they can get which includes jobs a lot of natural born citizens are excluded from because they are priced out of doing them, as they can't compete when it comes to the low pay an illegal immigrant is willing to accept because they have no other recourse, especially with the lack of access to the law to enforce a minimum wage for them. That result comes not from the progressive policy, but from the immigration policies like the kind the author of this article supports. Turning these immigrants into pariahs is what makes them vulnerable to exploitation. He criticizes the bishop for merely pointing out the condition, but the author himself supports the policies that result in the condition itself. So who is really doing the dehumanizing here, if you want to call it that? I would guess that a typical progressive would want such workers to be legalized, unionized, and paid a decent wage. Same for every other hard-working American. Which do you think seems to be more in line with the teachings of Jesus and the Bible in general? Which do you think seems to be more in line with improving society in America, and hence is pro-American?
If you're against deportation, why don't you do this? Why don't you invite them over your house? Bring them around your family, your friends, and your children. You can cook them a nice warm meal, and you guys can all sit around the table and share trendy Aragua stories.
Why not just invite illegal immigrants into your own home? I don't see you doing that, is a very common response people get when they defend illegal
it's a deflection
immigrants
response,
or are depicted as advocating for open borders. Now, if you're a Christian and you're responding to people that way, what on earth are you doing? That's what the Bible tells you to do. So why do you see it as an absurd notion to be used in an argument against others? The Bible tells you to welcome them, feed them, clothe them, and care for them. For you to use that as an argument of absurdity and hypocrisy is for you to scoff at the very tenets of Christianity, for you to be angry about those you think of as invaders and freeloaders, is for you to cling to the earthly world and earthly possessions and to remove all your trust from Jesus Christ, who told you that God would always provide for you and not to store up for yourself treasures on earth. Yet all you seem to care about are your treasures on earth. You should be the people least concerned with poor Christians streaming over the border in search of your help. You should be seeing them as a glorious opportunity to practice Christianity. Think of the missionaries who travel to the far reaches of the globe to help people. Yet when people in need come to you, you worry about your stuff. You worry about them taking from you. Does that sound Christ-like to you?
I mean, the movement in the United States has been this Joel Osteen kind of thing, hasn't it? If you are someone who is seeking religion, right? I would say, I don't know, I would guess, as it is with most every church, is that every church is getting smaller except for these super mega churches.
It's pretty broad, yeah.
And then the prosperity
especially
gospel
after
folks.
the pandemic. Yeah, and Joel Osteen's one of those.
Yeah, his church is
though
doing fine.
he doesn't claim that. He doesn't claim that, but clearly that's what he's preaching.
He didn't claim that he's prosperity gospel.
Right. He doesn't, it's interesting. He's a good example of he's good at what he does, but his message sucks. But people are drawn to it because he's compelling. He's very good at putting together the presentation of a sermon in a way that when you watch him, you go, oh, he's interesting, and well, he seems so kind, and he's good at that. He's very good at it. I can't argue with that. But the message is constantly, if you become a Christian and you are dedicated and you're faithful, then you're going to have more money.
Yeah.
It's just laughable because Jesus says the opposite.
And then related to that, in this case, he's not talking about the John here from Dark Matter. He's not talking about that. He's talking about you're worried about your stuff getting taken because somebody else is trying to have stuff.
And the whole stand your ground laws and all. Yeah, the whole stand your ground laws is, I kept hearing people go, I've got a right to shoot somebody if they come in my house. You do legally have a right to shoot somebody if they come in your house. But it became...
There's got to be context, though. It can't just be like...
That's right. Exactly.
People who are in your house, you can shoot.
You may remember this. It happened...
I never go anywhere if I just knew that that was the case.
Exactly. Well,
I've ruffled too many feathers over the years.
There was a couple over in, I think they were driving around Dandridge or Pigeon Forge, somewhere in that range of area. And they pulled in, they had a problem and they pulled into somebody's driveway to turn around and they got shot at. And then recently there was a teenage girl that was killed because she was doing the same kind of thing. And they just shot at her because she pulled in the driveway. She was absolutely no threat to him. She wasn't coming to his house. She wasn't close. She didn't have a weapon. He just shot at a car that was in his driveway. Mm-hmm. And the driveway was 100 feet long. We're not talking about a short little 10 feet driveway.
I think
and so this idea that my stuff are important than your life is just nuts.
Yeah. All right, let's keep on. We're about there.
But you know what? I'm a non-believer. You have memes for people like me, so you can just dismiss everything I've said here. How could someone like me possibly understand the teachings of Jesus Christ? Surely Jesus would have wanted you to be cruel and calloused to your fellow Christians. Surely Jesus would have wanted you to fear losing your possessions to the poor. Surely Jesus would want you to follow those who hoard massive sums of wealth. Surely Jesus would have wanted you to put your faith into the world rather than him. Because if you dismiss what I'm saying here, then that must be what you believe. I talked to a lot of Christians about this, and I want you to know that not all of them were on board with these strict anti-immigration sentiments. Bishop Buddy had her supporters in the Christian community. But I also talked to a lot of Christians who disagreed with her because I sought strong arguments from the other side. A pattern emerged for most of those conversations. They'd failed to justify their stance from a biblical perspective, investigate who I am, discover that I'm an atheist, and then immediately devolve the conversation into ad hominem attacks. I was called Satan. I was called a demon. I'm sure that makes it much easier to dismiss what I say. Calling me those things are for their comfort, to assuage the internal conflict that exists between adhering to the tenets of their professed faith and indulging in a satisfying political catharsis antithetical to said faith.
What are you gonna do? You gonna come take it out of my ham? I'm gonna eat half this plate during the break. Maybe I'll call the ICE hotline. I don't know if I'll have enough time. Sure. All kidding aside, it was actually really good taco. These people broke the law. They broke the law to get here.
As I saw...
Man, what a dick. What a dick.
What the hell was that?
Oh, that's Newsmax for you. Listen, if you get your news from Newsmax...
And Christians revel in the deportations going on right now. The kicking down of doors and the demanding of papers. the erosion of our Fourth Amendment, the new normal that we are to get used to, it made me realize something. Being anti-immigration as a Christian is similar to being addicted to porn as a Christian. It goes against their faith, but they do it anyway because they like the way it makes them feel. That probably also explains a lot of their other political opinions. The only real difference is that there is a history of shame for one, but not the other. So they feel free to indulge in their political vices. But what
Also
explains the cognitive...
What's that?
It's also that, bubble mentality that if everybody agrees with me, I can not only say what I believe, I can go bolder, I can go further out, I can get more extreme. Back in the when you became an adult, Newt Gingrich was around and he was doing the Contract on America.
Yeah.
And that whole thing was an era where you saw them say, I'm conservative than you, I'm more conservative than you. And conservative was a good word and liberal was a bad word. And to say I'm more conservative than you, they were just pulling themselves further and further and further and further and further to the right, moving the goalpost, so to speak. And, that led to, now it's okay to hate people. I mean, there was a time when I've said the Republican Party was a good check on the Democrat Party, because Democrats tend to want money to do. We're willing to spend the money to make people's lives better.
I think the money's there, though, man. The money's there. The money's there.
But then the Republican Party used to be about, if you're going to do that, that's not evil.
Just can't we afford it?
But you've got to do it. You got to show where you're going to come up with the money. Got to show. Right. So there was a little bit of a check and balance there, and that was okay. But now it's not even that. It's just completely off the rails in there. The Republican Party no longer exists.
Mm-hmm. No, it's the Trump Party.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance. I've been thinking about this a lot. It seems to me that the Christians who are most loud and proud about their Christianity are also the ones who hold political views antithetical to Christianity. It's like clockwork. You can very accurately guess all their political opinions just based on how loud they are about their Christianity. They value hoarding wealth and they fear others taking it from them. They revel in cruelty to the foreigner, the poor, and the prisoner. They value vengeance. They make a big show of their faith to be seen by others. What I think is happening here is that they are using Christianity as a participation trophy, a cheap veneer to hide their true religion, which is their politics. And that is why they get more angry if you resist their politics than if you resist their religion. Their politics is more real to them, more near and dear to their heart. The Christian participation trophy is to make them feel good and look good. Their true faith, their true obligation, that which they are truly beholden to, is their politics, rooted in greed and wrath. So what is Christianity to them? It's just purely compensating. To those Christians who do not use their Christianity in this way, I see you and I appreciate you. My channel would look very different if most Christians followed and respected the teachings of Jesus Christ. The very different attitudes and fruits of their faith make me wonder what it really means to be a Christian. When Jesus said to believe in him, did he only mean to be convinced that he is the Son of God and that he performed miracles, which by my view is not a belief deserving of special reward? Or did he mean to believe in what he taught, to follow his teachings? That, it seems to me, is something that has much more to do with your moral standing than just whether or not you believe certain events occurred thousands of years ago. So perhaps the atheist who is kind to the foreigner is more of an actual Christian than those who boast about their belief in Christ and then...
Listen, I'm not here to say that about myself, but hey, it would seem, huh?
You got quiet all of a sudden.
Yeah. I was trying to put together that thought. I was like, look, I don't. He's puffing his chest a little bit here. I don't think that needs to be done necessarily, because he's like, I'm not a Christian, and look at me, a little bit. But the sentiment is there, right? Like,
Yeah, it's funny because I would defend him on. I think he's just trying to say, I don't. Going back to the other statement we had about.
Yeah. No, I mean it's the same thing that we were talking about earlier. It's just let's not say we're not puffing our chest here. We're just saying like maybe you don't know your own book.
Yeah, I think I agree with that, and I think that he's saying that well actually.
Right. All right. Let's see what.
I was thinking that he quoted Matthew in Sermon on the Mount. In Gospel of Luke, Sermon on the Plain, which is probably the original story, way Jesus would have preached this. Instead of blessed are the poor in spirit, it's blessed are the poor. But he also says, woe to the rich. And in the end, not in the end, but in the middle of that, he's quoted this a number of times in different parts of that sermon here. The very last part of what I used this Sunday, the verse is, be merciful just as your Father is merciful. And when people try to claim Bishop Buddy was not being biblical in her teaching, it's just absurd. Anyway.
I think that puts a bow on it, man. We can listen. I don't think he has much left to say other than.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah.
Yeah. So, let's put a bow on this. I don't know if anybody's still here listening. Normally we're going to do a little bit more fun things. This is going to be one of our longer videos that we'll ever watch, an hour long. Hopefully.
Yeah, this was a long one.
But we've been sitting on this for a little bit and we've been trying to get this stuff together. I got some weird chat that luckily my chat bot would you like to hear some of the fun chat that was not in the chat because my chat bot
I don't see any of the chat, so.
Well you'd have to be on
one of the platforms watching.
Yeah, one of the platforms or something. So we got from one Poop Salad 45 just said, I just pooped myself, I don't know what to do.
Okay.
And then we also have from it looks like Kai Chi, but it also has some, it looks Asian letters that I don't know what it is. And then it said agenda ... a gender. I don't know. And then lastly, we had Padded Tissue, which was a bot themselves talking to my bot. Said cheap viewers on streamboo.com.
That's funny.
Everybody's working an angle. All right. Well, Billy, this was good. I'm glad we got a chance to talk and do our first video podcast or vodcast or whatever.
Yeah. Carla's been watching this. These guys have been doing this for 2,500 shows, and and they were, and another guy that does another. Both of them at one point was talking about how they, you know, how comfortable were they on camera when they first started doing stuff, things like that. And you know, you have to run through it, and you have to do it live. To really
Yeah.
get a feel for what you're doing.
Well, you know, me and you are not strangers to live.
No, we're not. And I'm not a stranger to staring at my camera anymore.
Yeah,
COVID,
you know,
so.
those days are over for at least a little while. All right.
No,
Well,
you only work one night a week, and I work one morning a week.
you know, I listen. We're about to be to the season. I'm about to be working a lot more.
Me too.
I work 2 nights a week, Billy, right now.
Oh, yeah, because you do weekends.
Yeah, I just had a day yesterday. It was like 8 in the morning. Get up, get ready, drive to Kingsport. I'd also had to practice a song that I was, working on, a country song for his first dance, and so I had a good 13-hour day in yesterday, Billy. I got home at midnight last night. And then, you know what?
Yeah,
Because I wanted to do this so bad, the first thing I could think about when I got up in the morning is I've got to get these things where I can stream
all
on
that technical
all
stuff.
of it. Yeah, it was a pain. I tried several different ways to get the chat. It's fun that nobody even used the chat, and I worked so hard on it. Jessica did, my wife. She put a laughing, crying emoji. I'm not sure why. And then we got the poop salad telling us about his accident. Yeah,
that's really sad.
Well, we'll do this again next Monday, 10 o'clock, and I'll be. What we'll do for those of you who are listening and watching, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to just kind of keep our eye on the media that we want to kind of review and have a little chit chat about in normal circumstances. We're going to try to do this from 10 to 12, and then we're probably going to do a little gaming too, and try to have a little fun, not have it be so serious all the time. But
just prove how old I am.
Yeah, well, Billy, I watched a video the other day on YouTube of a 70-year-old supersonic legend Rocket League player. And I know that means nothing to you. But that means
I got all those words.
Well, you got all those words. Yeah, so 70 plus the highest rank that you can achieve in the game,
Right.
So
Yeah.
Age ain't nothing but a number. All right.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun talking, and I'm gonna close the stream out. We'll probably chit chat a little bit after that and just see how we felt about it. But good night to everybody who's watching, and if you're watching this on a video on demand, we'll see you next time. Be easy. All right.
My live long and prosper there.
Oh yeah, you did it, didn't you? You think I'd be able to do it with a guitar playing hands, but actually it's this hand.
I envy anybody who can play the guitar. My hands do not do.
It's just muscle memory, man.
It's my fingers won't. I tried so hard to try to learn how to do that.
You got
30 years.
It's the pain. You got through the pain first.
Oh, that's the problem. I think. I think you're right about that.
It's pain, then it's build the muscle.
I saw a story on the Knoxville. One of those. What was the guy that used to do the cultural stories? And they were interviewing some guy who was some little restaurant in Knoxville somewhere, and he showed his fingertips, and they were just flat.
I mean, it's kind of what it's like. I mean, my fingers are a little bit like feet.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's going to do it for me. Have a good time. Any questions or any comments about today?
No, I think it was. I think you're right. We probably shouldn't choose videos that are the full length of the time we're going to have, if we want to have conversation at all. But
well, this was fine. I was like, I thought this would fit in about 2 hours, and it fit in 2 hours and 30 minutes.
30 minutes. Yeah.
You and I tend to be a little long-winded on some things, but yeah, this was an hour. This is an hour-long video, and normally I don't want to do an hour-long video. I want to do a 15-minute video. and have it be more discussion. And then, if we get into the game, we can still kind of like, I just thought of this, that kind of thing. And like, hopefully at that time, the people who will be in chat, hopefully will build up a chat, will be more willing to talk to us.
Yeah. And the game you sent me, that reminded me of, I don't know if it was actually Call of Duty.
That reminds me. I have these. Here, I'm going to do this so you
cards.
Can see.
You can close your screen, unshare your screen too.
Yeah, trying to. It's not doing it.
That'll be. It's not. No.
Whatever. I can take pictures. None of these have been scratched off. Again.
That's a good sign.
But I mean, we will see because the last one didn't either, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, good show, man. And I'll be in touch. Well, if you listen, I want you to feel very much in control. If there's something you want to talk and discuss, and I mean, I'll take charge as much as I can. But I mean, this was a good place to start for me, because I was like, hey, we want to set the tone with kind of what we're about is more the talk than the gaming thing, and then also I wanted to make it like he's one of the most well-known atheists on YouTube. He's not like the angry atheist who's probably the most well-known, or there's quite a few atheists that are on YouTube. It's not it's not a small community, but this is one of the more edgy ones, and I thought like, hey, this would be a good way to set the pastor and the atheist dialogue, right?
Yeah, and I think that he also is easy to listen to.
Well, and he knows the shit about the Bible too.
He seems to, yeah. I mean, there are some things where I would say he's a person who is an atheist interpreting the Bible occasionally.
Sure, yeah,
but
yeah.
A lot of it is not that. A lot of it is not that. He really does seem to understand it.
Well, cool. Thanks again, man. I hope you have fun on the project.
So far, yeah.
So far,
and
so
and on the taking the lead part, I'm just feeling my way, trying to figure out what it feels like to do what we're trying to do.
Sure, yeah. Who knows what this even comes of this? Probably nothing. But we at least had a chance to hang out ourselves, and then
yeah,
who knows?
And have good conversation.
Yeah, man. All right. Well, I'll holler at you later.
All right. Bye.
See you, bro.